Not. Okay, so we'll get your reaction for the Petit trial. I mean, this is an uphill battle, right, you guys?
Right.
This guy's going to try and fight for his life. Like, if any case just cries out for the death penalty, if you're going to even have a death penalty, it's a case like this, right, Dan?
Right, he's fighting for his life. There were 3 victims here that also fought for their lives, or actually went along with every demand to save their lives, and he and his accomplice killed them in a brutal, sadistic fashion. So there's no sympathy for him. No one with a well-adjusted background is probably going to do this. Anyone who's convicted of a crime like this is going to have some kind of trauma in their background, but that, to me, is not an excuse or a mitigation.
Anthony, how do you see it?
Well, it depends on the level of depraved background that this person's had. I mean, if he's been abused all his life, if he's never had anyone to ever guide him in any particular direction, if there's circumstances that are so extraordinary that anyone would look at it and say, my God, what chance could this man have possibly had to ever have done the right thing, and that the action and the conduct that was visited upon him during his childhood and his adult years really pushed him over the top. Well, there's a possibility the jury say, you know what, the threat has been eliminated. Sure. He's going to jail for the rest of his life.
Right.
So what benefit do we get by simply putting a needle in his arm? Because, let's face it, that is punitive. Okay. It has nothing to do with protecting society. We know that the death penalty is not a deterrent to people committing murder. So when you look at it and you weigh what's its purpose, which is really just to punish someone with the ultimate penalty, vis-a-vis eliminating the threat, if it's that bad, his background, you could possibly get a jury that would give him a break. I don't think it's going to happen in this case.
Let me ask you this. There's some news that's been released in one of the articles that we have for today, and you can check it out on foxnews.com. And I see Ann, so I'll give this question to you. There was some information that Stephen Hayes has actually said that he's, I guess, kind of the bad one, that he has killed, comparing the two, 17 people, collected victim sneakers as trophies, disparaged the accomplice as not even worthy of being his partner in crime. So saying he's not even good enough to be bad enough to be with me.
Right.
I mean, is that going to have any kind of impact whatsoever to say that, one was the leader, one was not, that in some way Comer Frajeski is like less culpable for the deaths and what happened in that house?
I mean, hope springs eternal that it will, but, these birds of a feather flock together. You're in for a dime, you're in for a dollar. The fact is they did it together, and one of them is the baddest guy, the other one's still bad. And I just think it makes them both look bad and both look worse to come in with this kind of a background. 17 people, I mean, these are horrendous crimes anyway. I still maintain there's been nothing worse that I've ever read about, seen anywhere in terms of a horrific homicide than this case.
Okay, now, Judge also said, Anthony, that these letters, he says they're uncorroborated, they're vague, they're unreliable, that maybe this guy's lying about killing 17 people. I hope someone's investigating this, by the way, because if there are, unsolved cases out there that he could be responsible for, I think those victims' families would like to know and have some closure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think they're really going to be admissible or have any real relevance to the jury. I don't disagree with Ann. I think the crime is of a level of heinousness that it really just, if you can impose the death penalty, and this jury is death penalty qualified, which means they'll do it under the right circumstances. This is certainly the case to do it, and I don't think those letters are going to help in any way. I agree. I think they simply add to the horror that people are feeling and sensing about this particular crime and these 2 individuals.
Yeah, well, one of the things, Dan, is that these were 4 letters, I guess, handwritten to someone named Lynn in North Carolina. One of the things, I guess, that came out during the trial is that he had this bizarre sneaker fetish, and that he took one pair of the sneakers of the little girl, the 17-year-old, and that was found in the car. So there's a little bit of corroboration, there, but, to what extent should that have impact? I mean, the guy, because of the tortured, abusive, perhaps depraved past, then he's easily led to a life of crime and these horrific crimes against, women and young children. I don't know.
I don't think it'll have any impact
sounds bad.
Right. I don't think it'll have any impact on this penalty phase. However, the fact that he mentions a sneaker fetish and he did take sneakers from a victim, the fact that he's specific about, in the letter, about videotaping one of his victims who was assaulted for hours, it shows that there might be some truth to his letter, and I assume the authorities are looking into it. It's not just a generic claim of 17 victims. These are specific allegations he's making about what he's done.
Ultimately, the question, Anne, is going to be whether or not it should mitigate down from death penalty to life without possibility of parole. All right, let's move on to Philadelphia. Philly basement suspect tired and lethargic. I love these titles. This is coming out of the Associated Press. So this is a suspected ringleader. It's a Social Security fraud scheme. Police say the mentally disabled people were held captive in a basement. It's a really disturbing story. I've heard some of the facts of it. That they may not have completely understood the seriousness of the charges against her, the suspect in this. The woman, Linda Weston, is about 51 years old. Her boyfriend is 47, and Eddie, the Reverend, Ed Wright, 50. They kidnapped, assault, false imprisonment, and other counts. They all were in court together. It's pretty despicable, preying on it. We got some video of it there, of the conditions in which these individuals were held captive and assaulted. And get your thoughts, Ann. Ann, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I thought you said Dan. Sorry. No, I think that if we can't protect our most vulnerable, then who could we protect? And the fact is, that's always an aggravating factor if you have vulnerable victims in something like this. And it's getting, obviously, national attention because it's hugely depraved. So I don't think they stand a chance.
Yeah, and our Social Security systems, they had more than 50 Social Security cards. One of the victims was malnourished. Another one was chained to a boiler, and they're collecting this. I mean, we've heard these kind of cases before, Anthony.
No, there's no question. I mean, the conduct, and as Ann said, it's always an aggravating factor in any statute that I know of in any state where you take advantage of people who are disabled or are not capable of defending themselves and caring for themselves, whether they're simply mentally impaired or they're elderly or whatever it might be. The penalties are going to be enhanced.
Right.
And for the length of time in which this occurred, and what the conduct that was visited upon these people and how these people were put through hell, quite frankly, I mean, it just cries out for justice and for the maximum penalty under the law. There's no question about it. It's hard to imagine anything that's in mitigation of it. Every day after day after day, you see these people lying there the way they are, and you're treating them in this manner.
It's horrific.
What's the mitigation of it?
Nothing.
Nothing. There really is nothing.
Forever, Dan.
Yeah.
And this defendant was accused and convicted of murder in the early 80s for a boyfriend of her sister who they imprisoned, who then starved to death. So she's someone who's just a sadistic person who's torturing people. And this was a thought-out crime. I mean, like you said, there were Social Security cards, there were power of attorney documents. One was chained to a boiler.
Right.
So she's now raising competency issues, but this isn't some just wild physical act. This is a planned-out scheme.
And 8 kids have been taken into protective custody that were associated with the defendants. I mean, it's a vicious cycle here of everyone being connected to this very upsetting case. All right, let's circle back about Eric Holder. And this was interesting. Lise brought this up. And basically, he says that too many in Alabama are willing to turn their backs on our immigrant past. Do you think, Dan, it's appropriate for the sitting, Attorney General to be making kind of very politicized comments like this?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of on the line. This issue is really a hot topic. First of all, the federal court here, the 11th Circuit, issued a temporary injunction while they wait to hear oral arguments on the Alabama law. There's a bunch of these laws springing up around the country, and this is the toughest.
That's inappropriate for the court to do that, issue that injunction? What do you think?
I think it makes sense because these are really severe parts of the law, such as having schools have to check every student to see if they're documented or not.
Right,
a lot about having contracts with illegal aliens, whether they're valid or not. So they're issuing a temporary injunction. They're doing an expedited argument. So within the next 2 months, there'll be oral arguments. The federal government is arguing preemption. So as the Attorney General, he certainly can give his opinion, but he went beyond just saying that the law is invalid. He's saying that it actually is going back to the civil rights era and violating people's rights. So that's a topic that I guess will be decided.
I don't think he was inappropriate. He's the Attorney General. He has a right to give an opinion as to whether he thinks a law is valid or not.
Yeah.
I don't think the 11th Circuit was wrong. I think they did the appropriate thing by putting the injunction in. They're going to expedite the ruling on it. Look, he made reference to almost that Alabama's laws, and what they're doing is almost harking back to segregation in some manner.
That's
and I think that's what the implication was. So whenever there's that sensitivity involved when you're dealing with people's civil rights, I think it's more appropriate sometimes than not to see somebody who is political in nature, obviously, as the Attorney General, come out and give his opinion. So I don't think there's anything improper about it.
So you think it's okay?
I do.
So far, so good. We'll see with the courts. It's up to the 11th Circuit. No matter what Eric Holder says, they're going to have to decide it. This amongst many issues. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back after these messages. Stay with us.